listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Welcome. It's This Week in Pharmacy. My name is Todd Ure, your host, founder of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm excited to be here with you. Thanks so much for tuning in. So much happening in the pharmacy profession, how it's impacting people's lives throughout the nation, actually throughout the world. We just got back from the American Pharmacist Association's annual meeting, which took place, I can't believe how fast time goes, at the end of March. And we met up with FIP, the Federation of International Pharmacists, the global entity overseeing what's happening in the world of pharmacy. And we're trying to build some collaboration with them. They're really open to it. So we're excited. And if you haven't listened to Katrina Azur, who is a podcaster out of New Zealand, she has some amazing content for our profession, as well as Pharmacist Diaries, podcaster Anisha Patel. We will be expanding globally. So this is not just Pharmacy Podcast Network in the States, it's Pharmacy Podcast Network globally, because the words and the actions and the ideas of our pharmacists, our technicians, and our pharmacy professionals nationally is pretty significant. And we're excited about what's happening in pharmacy. And with that, let's jump in today. Let's talk about the world of what's happening. Just mentioned Anisha Patel, master these skills if you want to work in the pharmaceutical industry. This is an episode that just came out earlier today, earlier this week. Please take a listen to this. This is an interesting look at a Gina, who is a MSL, and she works with pharma. And as a pharmacist, she builds some really interesting relationships and representing specific disease states and products. And she really has a goal as a side business to level up our pharmacists as being consistent resources for information for physicians and for collaboration teams on in patient care. Very interesting episode. The Profit Summit Live Part 2 just came out this week. If you're interested in understanding what Dr. Lisa Fast and Diversify is doing to differentiate the world of community pharmacy, this is the second part of this podcast. A shout out to PrimeRx and to Happier at Home. Thank you so much for supporting this program. Interesting episode with several people that are really making some splashes in community pharmacy. RX Mile, which is a delivery system that's doing over 3,000 deliveries in just the greater Miami area. They're a rising delivery system. RX Rise, Adam Gladio, he's just a champion for independent community pharmacy. He has an interesting model at rxrise.com. One of my favorite pharmacy owners, Adam Robinson, who's known as the workflow guru. And take a listen to his efforts as a community pharmacy owner with Save Right. We're going to be digging into remote patient monitoring. I wanted to preface this with Ian Shelley from Value Care Suite, and they're part of this post show. And then we rounded out with Lisa's right hand, Heather Harrow, which talks to us about where Profit Summit is going to be going for 2025, and we'll be there for sure. Hey, I wanted to give a shout out to Jenna Quinn, Dr. Jenna Quinn. If you know Jenna, if she's on your LinkedIn, what a great resource for pediatric pharmacists. And please share this content as pharmacists and pharmacy technicians with other physicians and people that you know. Melatonin. I've always wondered about melatonin and how this impacts kids. I have 4 of my own, so I've been very curious about this. This is a great episode that Justin Cole, Dr. Cole, and Dr. Quinn review with Dr. Anna Esperum, who's the founder of Health Empower Her. And this is an excellent episode to share on children and melatonin, if you've ever been curious about that. Shout out to Pharmacy Crossroads for featuring Marcom's community pharmacy and finding better ways to grow through technology, and how Suncrest Solutions is really helping community pharmacy in that space. We're excited about the attraction that we're getting from companies, products, pharmaceutical manufacturers, technology companies, and we're reaching 30% of the market. We're reaching 30% of all of our pharmacists in the country, and that's significant to allowing and empowering pharmacists to let you know what you do to improve healthcare throughout the country. Without further ado, I'm going to jump into some news because there's some things going on. We want to start out with sharing an article from The Hill. And this was titled, Pharmacy Middlemen Are Driving Up Costs for Respiratory Medicines, and It's Time to Act. This is written by Tanya Winders, and this just came out earlier this week, and it goes down through people living with asthma who are dependent on inhaler respiratory medicines and how the PBMs are jacking up coverage based on their models and how they've negatively impacted treatment and people that are dealing with COPD. This is huge. You as a pharmacist, I know you care about your patients. I know you care about better medication delivery. And when you have a payment organization, PBM, standing in the way of you tracking treatment and getting treatment to patients, that is super frustrating. And you should be angry, and you should be writing to your local state representatives or sending this kind of article to them, just making some comments, putting this out on LinkedIn, putting this out through social media, getting the public to understand that you as a pharmacist cannot do your job for them the right way when their insurance company is standing in the way of getting the treatment that's necessary. This is another follow-up article from care11.com. That's KARE11.com, a news program, a local news out of Minnesota. Pharmacists turn to legislation to try to slow record independent pharmacy closures. And this article says that Minnesota Pharmacists Association said that 24 non-chain pharmacists closed in Minnesota in 2023, leading to deserts in metro and rural areas. This is happening everywhere. This is not just Minnesota. And this article really highlights what's happening specifically in this specific Midwest territory, and how several new bills are being included by the state representatives about how pharmacists really saved the day during the COVID pandemic, but how now they're now getting shut down because, once again, PBMs are sucking up all of the revenues and profits in the form of profits from the way that reimbursement's supposed to take place. This has really run amok. It's really gotten out of hand. It's a public health issue, and it's quite frustrating. So be aware of pharmacy deserts. Please bring this to our attention. Share news articles from your local news through social media. Reach out to us at Pharmacy Podcast. We're heavy into LinkedIn the most, but also Instagram and Twitter is still alive, known as X, obviously. But let's talk about some good news. I've been tracking Click Therapeutics for over a year now, based on our relationship with Finn Partners. And Click Therapeutics and Otsuka Pharmaceuticals have been cleared by the FDA with the first digital therapeutic for depression. And the article here, it says FDA clears the first digital therapeutic for depression, but will payers cover it? And it goes into the new app called Rejoin, and it's exciting. It's focused on depressive disorder, people dealing with depression, and how the software app can help modify behaviors through a series of lessons and exercise received this clearance from the FDA. This is super duper exciting. However, we have to have buy-in from our physicians and pharmacist teams. But I want pharmacists, any of you out there that are in mental health, would you reach out to me? I would like to build a 3-part series on mental health specifically in the usage of technology, medications, supplements, diet, which plays a huge part in mental health, and pharmacist insight. So that's a future program that is coming, and we're excited to cover this again. But a shout out to Click Therapeutics. Congratulations to Otsuka Pharmaceuticals and pushing digital therapeutics forward, which is super duper exciting. I also want to say thank you to our supporters, our sponsors, NasoCleanse. I don't know if you've heard of this product yet, but I just want to play a short message from NasoCleanse.
Do you suffer from allergies or a dry nose? Use a CPAP or travel frequently? Introducing NasoCleanse, a comfortable and convenient way to clean and moisturize your nose. At home or on the go. Our unique cleansing wand is like a gentle toothbrush for the nose. And with our specially formulated antiseptic gel, NasoCleanse leaves your nose feeling fresh and clear. After all, you wash your hands, you brush your teeth. But what about your nose? NasoCleanse, simple, clean nasal hygiene.
I find it really interesting. I've tried NasoCleanse several times. I use it probably about once a week, and just had a new episode recording with Dr. Gail Lebovic, which we're excited about that coming to Pharmacy Podcast Network. This is a shout out to our community pharmacies and using something that is very novel and works and really educates our patients about nasal health. Especially if you're putting something up there in the form of medication and you're doing a cleaning first to get better absorption of said medicine. But take a look at NasoCleanse. Once again, that's nasocleanse.com. And we appreciate them for supporting us and sponsoring today's This Week in Pharmacy. All right. Well, without further ado, I want to get into our really amazing two guests today. First up is Dr. Tamara Lawful, who is deeply into nutrigenomics and pharmacogenomics, and she shares some updates with us. And let's listen to that. Let's listen to that now. Can't even talk. There you go. And that's This Week in Pharmacy. Hey, and on This Week in Pharmacy, we have Tamara Lawful, one of the Pharmacy 50. I wanted to just say welcome, Dr. Lawful. It's so good to have you here on This Week in Pharmacy.
Thank you for having me, Todd. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
What year was it? Was it 2022 that you were voted as Pharmacy 50?
2023.
2023. That's right.
Just recently.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
What are you doing in the profession that you're standing out? Because not only do I see you everywhere and I love your social media, but you are professional. You are poised. You're kind of, I like using you kind of as I like using you as an example for pharmacy students where I'm saying, listen, you may want to go into long-term care. You may want to go into retail. You may want to go into becoming a medical science liaison. But I want our pharmacy students to realize they have to become a brand, right? They have to become a voice to attract opportunities to themselves, to assure that they are commanding their own careers based on the popularity of what they're driving in blogging, in podcasting, in speaking events, and it's there's never a time not to start. Like if I could go back in time, I started in 2009, but if I could go back in time and realize, boy, if I would have done some more writing and more blogging to document my journey, I would have been more prevalent to the markets that I was trying to be a part of. Can you talk to our listeners about kind of standing out and being professional and being a content developer?
Definitely, Todd. I mean, when it comes to pharmacy, there is so much we can do. You listed quite a bit there. I think what's important is first we find what our passion is, identifying it, and through blogging and writing and even at home personally, journaling can help us do that. And then when you identify what your passion is, what really drives you, it becomes easier to find your voice. And then behind that voice, it becomes easy to brand yourself because your voice becomes your brand, and you can authentically be yourself and talk about whatever topic it is because it's driving you. That's what's driving you. So for new pharmacists out there, it can be difficult. You may not know what your passion is at first. So I encourage you to try different things. Definitely, there's nothing wrong with trying different things, or just talking to people, reaching out to pharmacists that are doing something different, or that's something that interests you, and ask them about it. And maybe you can work with them a little bit. Maybe they can just give you some insight. Maybe they can direct you to certain resources, but definitely explore and get your hands in it so that you can first identify that passion, find your drive.
Yeah. Yep. And then I think of the pharmacist who's been in retail for 5, 6, 7 years, who says, all right, I've done this. I've learned the world of customer service. I've learned the world of, the in the trenches pharmacy practice. I want to move to fill in the blank specialty, long-term care. I want to get into clinical trials, something. What have you done in taking kind of the steps to prepare to be the master of your own, career and moving forward as an entrepreneur per se, to make that transition? How long do you think it takes? I mean, it's different for everyone, but talk about the process of blending the difference between, like me, from 2009, when I launched the podcast, to 2019, I was working a full-time 50-hour-a-week job to take care of my family and do what I'm doing. It's a combination of pharmacy software. It was addiction therapy. It was helping pharmacist in technology. And then I made the jump to entrepreneurship 100% of the time running this publication. Talk to us about your journey.
Wow. You're right. The journey for everyone is absolutely different. Making the decision to pursue entrepreneurship, and for me, I started it, and I still am. I still have a full-time job in a hospital setting, a Trauma One medical center, a very busy hospital setting. But to make the decision to start leaning towards, hey, maybe, this steady income that I'm going to get is not something I want to do anymore. Not that I don't want steady income, but my passion was driving me somewhere else, and which was entrepreneurship. So the transition can be difficult, but, and for each person, yes, it's different. So you find what works for you. For me, what worked was doing my business part-time or half the time. But also having a work schedule with the hospital that allowed me to work on my business as much as I could. So I only work every other week at my hospital. So I have a week on, a week off, and that off week, I am all in for life balance, all in with podcasting, all in with health coaching my clients, and all in with business consulting for pharmacists. And a lot of work is necessary for me to be all in on that week that I'm not working at my full-time job. And what I'm saying is that I had to do a lot of work before I could start it. I had to set a lot of things up in the background so that things are automated now. Yep. So because I have these automations in place for the services that I offer to those who want health coaching or those who want business consulting, it makes it so much easier. I don't need to have a whole team of 20 people doing these things because I have these automations in place. But it was a lot of hours, a lot of work. I took months off work a few years ago to build all this for my business. So it's entrepreneurship. There are some people that just dive right into it because they have the means to. They can stop working their full-time job and just dive right into it. For me, it's a slow transition. And on top of that, I love being a pharmacist. That's why my podcast is called Pivoting Pharmacy, not Leaving Pharmacy. So we're just pivoting to use the pharmacy skills a little bit differently. But in a hospital setting, people are coming with acute problems, medical problems that require the use of medications. And so I enjoy being part of that, being part of the solution for those patients in those dire moments. And but on the other hand, seeing that is what pushed me towards what I do now with health coaching, because I have people coming with heart failure, exacerbation. They're coming in with obesity, diabetes, these hypertension. These are all problems, all chronic illnesses that are preventable. So I had to start thinking, what can I do to help prevent people from coming to the hospitals with these conditions? And that's where I am now with using Nutrigenomics as that tool to guide patients to better health and incorporating healthier lifestyle habits and nutrition habits.
So for you personally, Tamara, talk to us about what you're creating. So this is my imagination, so you'll take time to correct this. So I'm thinking of you out there, doing the social media, you're really good on Instagram. Your graphics are professional, your whole, look. So I think it's definitely sellable. And you're out in Clovis, California, right?
Yes.
So I'm thinking of the community that you're in. So it's my imagination that you would create this stickiness to people in your community that would be like, hey, you're on 16 meds. You're not, you're a diabetic. You're going through this. We want to sit down. We want to do a medication management review. We kind of want to get you back on a better track. We might want to do some deprescribing. We might want to do some pharmacogenomics testing or nutrigenomics testing to really dial into this precision medicine. But when you get to that point, what are you doing? An incident to billing environment with a physician to take the baton and really run with the treatment that you're corresponding or you're kind of consulting with a physician? How do you get started with like an NPI number to be able to bill or to be able to do something? Talk to me about how to build that. And is that the future for Dr. Tamara Lawful?
That is a great question, Todd. So I'm going to start with the keyword autonomy. When I decided to become an entrepreneur, I wanted full autonomy. I wanted full control. I wanted to be the decision maker and the only decision maker when it came to how I ran my business. As a result of that, I decided to go cash pay. I did not want to involve insurance companies. When it comes to physician involvement, they are my referral system. So I've developed relationships with physicians in my community so that they know about my business, Life Balance, and my Inner Glow health coaching program, and how I can help patients with diabetes, obesity, hypertension, all those chronic illnesses get their health back in order. So they will refer their patients to me. I communicate with them if there's anything that I notice with the patients that enroll in my program. So those who are on medications, yes, I am reviewing their medication profile. I'm educating them, looking for drug interactions, and then focusing a lot on those lifestyle and nutrition changes and habits. I've worked with some pharmacists who do want to do the billing side of things, incorporate that with insurance companies. So it gets a little bit trickier because of the nature, and it depends on the state as well. The nature of what we're doing as pharmacists in this type of setting is not traditional. A lot of insurance companies, they're not really sure how to bill that. So the billing portion really comes into working. It's easier if you do work with a physician, collaborative agreement with them, or they hire you on as part of their team, whether it's a consultant or a W-2, like an actual employee. It becomes easier because then the billing can be done through the doctor's office. And the coding.
Is that considered the terminology incident to billing?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Excellent. So if you're driving, if you're walking, if you're listening to this podcast and it's audio only, then you don't see the website, which is the Life Balance and Life LYFE balance.com. So the LYFE balance.com. I love the logo, In Her Glow, and I like the fact that you have a 90-day roadmap as well as a practitioners for physician referrals and pharmacists, your blog, obviously the podcast. Talk to the listeners about where you see this going. Is this something that you hope to grow enough of a patient base that this becomes a full-time, your full-time work?
Absolutely, Todd. This is what my full-time work will be very soon. When I created my business, I did not name it Tamara Lawful Consultants because I envisioned it to be a large organization at the time called Life Balance. I'm actually working on changing the business name to Inner Glow, as you see on the website. So that's why we have, right now it's trademarked and it's about to be approved as a registered trademark, Inner Glow. So I want it to be a huge organization where we are helping people get off medications by focusing on implementing lifestyle changes and nutrition. Ideally, I would love it to be pharmacist-led. I want all pharmacists to be the health coaches, that are guiding them. And I have a signature protocol that I use with my patients or my clients. And in the business consulting part of it, depending what level of the consulting they choose and coaching they choose, they actually get access to my protocol as well as my program to use with their own clients and patients. So it's already made, it's turnkey. I train them on how to use it. I help them build up their marketing, their branding, all of it, all the fun stuff. So because my vision is to make it something larger. But for now, any pharmacist that's interested, I am offering services to help them start their own nutrigenomic-based practices and programs.
That's incredible. Excellent. All right. So what's next? You have a webinar that I think that you're going to be doing. You probably do these on some kind of cyclical basis, but talk to us about how you're getting the word out there.
Yeah. So I have the latest webinar I have is how to use weight loss medications and maintain the results, because they're all the craze right now. The new injectable weight loss medications, like Zepbound, or people still referring them to the Ozempic and Mounjaro, which are indicated for diabetes and weight loss associated obesity for patients who have diabetes. So I decided to, because a lot of the phone calls I get for people who are interested, the women that are calling me, is this safe? Even friends that I have, what do you think about Ozempic? So I said, you know what? I'm just going to do a webinar. I'm going to break down all the weight loss medications, even the older ones. I go way back, Todd, and compare all of them and just inform. Because as a pharmacist, yes, I want people to avoid medications if needed. But the fact is, people are going to use medications. Doctors are going to prescribe them. The big pharma, I'm little on me. What am I going to do, right, against big pharma? So I want to educate people out there about the safety of the medications, how to actually use them, what to expect from them, the side effects, and what happens when you stop using it, right? And how I can help them if they decide to stop using that medication, still continue to have safe weight loss. Even if they're on the medication, they can still I can still help them develop healthy habits, because we know that's what's necessary, right? The healthy eating habits, and to help you with the weight loss and having an active lifestyle as well. So that's what a webinar is about. I saw a need because people were so inquisitive about these medications. So I just want to let them know the truth about it, and no judgment. It's a judgment-free zone in the webinar. It's all there to educate you, to make them well-informed decision makers so they can take control of their own health.
Well, we're proud of you. I'm so thankful that you're part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. It's been wonderful watching you grow. You're not even into your first year anniversary yet, and already you're setting podcast world on fire through us and with us, and I just love it. So I want to share with the listeners, just understanding kind of the significance. Tamar's podcast is doing extremely well. And once again, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on our TWIRx video feed, you can see on your screen that her latest episode that was released on March 1st, the first episode of March, and it was about if you want healthier kids. This is a great show. I actually sent this to several of my own family members, including my sisters who lean much more holistic and natural. My sister's actually a nutrition down in Melbourne's medical center. And she made comments about loving this, this podcast, but 619 listeners, downloads. And I was just talking to Tamar, the average podcast gets 141 downloads in a month. And we are a podcast network that wants the attention of our pharmacy care professionals. And we're not out there just necessarily just for the public. So that is significant. And I just wanted to congratulate you.
Thank you, Todd. And thank you for having me on the network and providing that platform for me to get the word and the message out there. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to have you back. We have lots to talk about.
Yes.
Maybe a contributor in the future with some of the investigative reporting that you do on things. But you have a home here. You always have a home here. One of the most innovative pharmacists in my own network, which like I said, I'm proud of what you're doing. But thanks for being on This Week in Pharmacy.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Todd.
That was great. Thank you so much, Tamar. Shout out to you, what you're doing in your own profession. That should be a lesson for our future pharmacists and pharmacists out there who want to grow either a side business or take a side business, AKA side hustle, and build it into a primary business that is all that you do. Don't ever stop beating the doors down that close you off from your dreams. Keep going, keep pushing, and reach out to our network. Our network is filled with people who have started side businesses and now they're doing it full time. Want to give a shout out to Ural Pharma. They are one of our sponsors, and want to give them a highlight right now and play a short message from Ural Pharma.
Pharmacists, meet Ural Pharma, a dynamic newcomer to the U.S. generics marketplace. Ural Pharma's current portfolio focuses on high-quality authorized generic medicines in the acute pain and endocrinology therapeutic areas. Backed by its parent company, IBSA, a multinational pharmaceutical company headquartered in Switzerland, Ural Pharma has harnessed IBSA's cutting-edge drug delivery technologies and has made great strides in expanding access to its products across the U.S. Looking ahead, Ural Pharma is committed to delivering complex generic medicines across a broad spectrum of therapeutic areas. To learn more, including important safety information about its products, visit uralpharmainc.com. That's YARAL pharmainc.com and connect with them on LinkedIn.
All right, we are back, and before our next interview with Dr. Ann Arvizu, who's been a friend of mine for quite some time. She is South Floridian, and I'm missing Floridian weather right now, Florida weather right now, up in rainy Western Pennsylvania in the Pittsburgh market. But before that, I want to give a shout out to all of the pharmacists who have taken interest in the Pharmacy Guild. If you want to learn more about that, go to pharmacyguild.org. This is the efforts of several passionate pharmacists, including Shane Jerominski, Bled Tanoe, Marie Shaw, all PharmDs, all driving for better workplace placement without the burnout, or better work environments, better tech to pharmacist ratios in the retail chain environment. I want you to look that up, pharmacyguild.org, and just send them a message of support, send them some questions, let them know what you think of unionization for our retail community pharmacies. And I just think it's necessary based on what's happened with the payment model, and that's all dominoes. That's the world of macroeconomics and what happens when you do something to a market that is very unnatural. And sucking up all of that revenue in the form of profit by PBMs is absolutely not natural. So let's go to Ann. I'm excited about this interview, and I want to say thank you to Ann Arvizu for participating in This Week in Pharmacy. Hey, on This Week in Pharmacy, I have a special guest back, one of our hosts that's been one of my friends for, I think it's been longer than 5, 6, 7 years. I'm missing time as I get older. It will definitely happen. But Ann Arvizu, Dr. Arvizu, has been a conduit of subject matter expertise to me in the pharma manufacturing side of things, because that's her whole background as a medical science liaison. Isn't it interesting? We just did a episode on medical science liaisons and how pharmacists are rising to the top of who's being chosen. This was from an organization called MSL Talks, and we just released this on March 8th, and it was insights from the experts from the Carolyn Group, Tom Caravella, and Dr. Sarah Snyder from the Carolyn Group was talking about medical science liaisons and how important it is to have pharmacist representation in understanding the pharmacological background, mixing that with correspondence with the physicians, and really knowing how a specific disease state and a specific disease state treatment plan can be influenced by a pharmacist's knowledge I want to welcome Anne because we have lots to talk about in the world of endometrial cancer and the mission, the new mission that you're on, Anne. And I'm so glad to welcome you back to This Week in Pharmacy.
Thank you, Todd. And can I just comment on what I used to do in the pharmaceutical industry?
Absolutely.
I was not actually an MSL. I started the first MSLs called regional medical scientist at GlaxoSmithKline many years ago when I was a regional director of medical information and communications at GlaxoSmithKline. And then I was an executive, global executive, senior director of MedInfo, MedCom, and the library services, literature services, and the medical library for Baxter, Baxalta, and Shire. So very little bit different there. The field medical is the medical science liaison. So if people don't know the lingo, these are the inside people that we are more attached to the post-marketing data and people that create the research to keep the company compliant and the data that is going out that helps physicians know about the drugs as they come out. So we're like the data organizers and police force, if you will, of the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, the police force to keep the public safe and public health safe.
Yes.
Nice shirt, by the way, the U.S.
Yes.
Farmy.
U.S. Farmy. U.S. Farmy.
Yeah, appreciate that. You can find your shirt at usfarmy.com, and all of the revenue that we collect goes to a local veterans organization here in Fayette County, Pennsylvania. And we raised about $2,000 over the last couple of years for that organization. So I was very excited about how many pharmacists and technicians have bought the shirt. That's good. Share with us.
Get the T-shirt.
Yeah, get the T-shirt, exactly. Share with us about your new mission and how I'm helping, and very proud to be a member of your board and regarding what you formed, a very special organization called the Endometrial Cancer Foundation.
Yeah, we were pre-talking about this topic, and March right now we're in Endometriosis Awareness Month, and September is gynecological gynecological cancer awareness month, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But as the healthcare provider and professional, and really more deep clinical scientist that I have been, because I have not been a dispensing pharmacist except for like back in 1998, right? Like a long time ago. I've been in this industry for 30 years. So it was very strange to me that I was, I had endometriosis a long time ago, but when I developed endometrial cancer decades later, there was no link between the two. So we're going to talk about both today. But I was that healthcare professional that when you switch the other side of the table and you become the patient, you just don't even know what to do. So just a little snippet of my story, you can go to endometrialcancerfoundation.org to read the whole story, but I'll give you a snippet, right? I was adopted at birth. So I didn't know my genetic markers or if I had any genetic tendencies, which now we can find out through genetics testing if you have a predisposition to certain cancers so that you can be aware of them. And so because I knew about that, as soon as the genome stuff broke, I tested myself and I had no history, even though it was right before I met my birth mom. And I knew, she didn't have any, once I met her, I knew she didn't have any risk factors for cancer. But I knew already genetically that I didn't have any maternal or paternal. Like there's nothing in my genes that says you should get some kind of a cancer. So thank God, knock on wood, I have this lovely desk. So it was astounding to me that I went through so many different things. So let's start with endometriosis first, because that's the month we're in. So we need a little bit of background on that. When I was younger, I did have some endometriosis, but I did not know about that until my first gynecological surgery. So I had my right ovary removed in 2006, something like that. And he's like, when I came out, he's like, 2 for 1. I said, what do you mean 2 for 1? He said, because not only did I get, the ovary removed, everything looked good, and it was a thecoma, totally benign, but I got some endometriosis out for you too. It was wrapped around part of your bowel, And if you feel something, because I had asked him, I said, you took out my right ovary, but why is it like kind of fiery on the left? And he said, I took that endometriosis out. And so didn't even know it was in there. So let's go back. If you look at endometriosis, it's an estrogen dependent chronic inflammatory disease. So for the 10% of reproductive aged women that get it, they are the unlucky ones that have painful periods, and it's affecting like 10% of reproductive aged women and girls globally. So it's like 190 million women and girls. And you think about that this is not going to be a big thing as we move into menopause, but because of hormone replacement therapy and because of anytime a girl has something wrong with her during her, periods, the first thing they do is they put her on the pill. So we have all these exogenous hormones going in, and this is an estrogen dependent chronic inflammatory disease. So the idea of the treatment, which we don't know the etiology of the disease, right? We don't know how it occurs. So therefore, how can we know to treat it? So what is it exactly? What is the pathogenesis of endometriosis? Is it known? And the answer is no. It's completely uncertain. So when you don't know, you're throwing darts at something. And this is very common in medicine, right? We're throwing darts at something to treat symptoms. So we can treat the pain, or we can scrape the uterus, or we can do these other things, but they are just maybe temporary situations. So what happens is, when I was diagnosed with endometrial cancer, which thank God I am 2.5 years cancer free now, it was taken out. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. And there was no link whatsoever between endometriosis and endometrial cancer. And finally, I think, you start talking loud enough and long enough, myself and many other women who are now speaking up again about the cancer. And hey, did you have it? Right. So retrospective data that I'm doing through the charity, did you have, did you have endometriosis? Were you on the pill? How long were you on? So you look at these questions as a true scientist to look at retrospective data. And that's something that we're interested in doing at the Endometrial Cancer Foundation. The second thing we're actually the first and most important is education, educating the public, educating women about their own body parts, educating women about the 5 types of gynecological cancer, and trying to demystify all of what that is going on. So, right, there's no cure for endometriosis. Treatment is usually aimed at controlling symptoms. And then there's been some data about like what I really, really care about, my true therapeutic expertise, which is in central nervous system disorders like anxiety and depression. So stress, chronic illness, and things like that. In my work, well, endometriosis is a kind of a crisis because it's chronic and it's going to affect you. So it's going to affect potential fertility, and it's going to affect an estimated up to 40% of women who have had endometriosis will then later have some kind of other gynecological issue like infertility. And then with infertility comes more drugs, right? More products for women who want to go through maybe IVF, et cetera. And then they're taking more exogenous hormones. So we've gotten ourselves into this microwave type of society where we want to just fix with what we have, but we're not looking at the big picture scientifically to see what can happen when. Now, I don't ever want to create harm, right? And I don't want to create fear. So of the 10% of the women that get endometriosis, 10% of that might go on at a later date to develop endometrial cancer. So why? Why, first of all, is the lining of your uterus, the endometrium, why are those cells packing up, leaving the uterus, leaving this open system that we have into the peritoneum, and then taking up residence somewhere else? Like there's like I didn't give anybody a relocation package, right? So we need to find out why. And so immunologists have been doing some deep research on that. And they're saying, well, maybe it has something to do with natural killer cells and these other cells that we have in our body that fight disease. And that might be so we have natural killer cells, dendritic cells, neutrophils, T cells, B cells, macrophages, cytokines, inflammatory mediators, right? And they contribute to the vascularization and fibrogenesis of endometriotic lesions. So that accelerates maybe some of the implantation that this ectopic endometrial lesions, that's how the endometriosis is maybe leaving. So they're showing much more of a correlation of that, but it's not proven, it's not duplicated, right? Because in science, we have to duplicate before we actually can say that's the actual answer. So, but if you had to ask me, I would say that is big. Stress is a big factor, and exogenous hormone therapy. So these are three things that I think women really need to be aware of. Johns Hopkins is really good at saying everyone is at risk of cancer. And they love to say that because if we say that, then we'll be more aware of what can we do to prevent. And there's a lot that we can do. So we're not going to get into all that today, but that's a little bit of background of maybe where the link is between what I do and what we're celebrating this month and what we're trying to not celebrate, but celebrate the warriors that are dealing with endometriosis and the pain there, and try to bring awareness to the disease state and what its maybe long-term repercussions might be, so that we can kind of guide people to say, maybe I shouldn't be on the pill. Maybe I should take better precautions. Maybe I should get my, HPV vaccine, because it's not just that it could link to endometrial cancer. It could link also to ovarian cancer. It could link to cervical cancer. And it really depends on what cells are kind of going to go awry when they're leaving the uterine body.
So let's take a pause for a second. So our podcasts on the PPN are really geared towards our clinicians. They're primarily for our pharmacists, but we're getting physicians that are listening because we're starting to do a lot of collaborative series on vaccines and disease state specific things. So talk to us just in case there's a pharmacist that is listening. They have contact with patients that are experiencing these things, and or a family member that might be experiencing endometriosis. Where's the link between endometriosis and cancer?
The link is not 100% known as to where it is or why those cells change later on, but there is a link that shows finally that, early treatment is your best shot at managing the disease and preventing the onset of cancer. So women with endometriosis, as of 2021, it was said they do not have an overall increased risk of endometrial cancer. But some studies recently have indicated that they kind of have a higher incidence of ovarian cancer, that there's this link that's happening with endometrial cancer, and a lot of it is hormone related, right? So endometrial cancer used to be a disease where they would say it's happening to women over 65. Well, it happened to me at 52. And here's another thing. When somebody's had endometriosis, right, the disorder of childbearing age, they also tend to, like I said, they tend to go into infertility. They also tend to go into early menopause. Early menopause is defined as before 45 years of age. So that was another risk factor of mine. Risk factor included the So the endometriosis is the second most common benign, quote unquote, disease that is happening in the outside of the uterine body, or originating from the uterus and then coming outside, to also myomas, right? So fibroids is the other word for it that people would know. And the Journal of Human Reproduction found that endometriosis increased the risk of developing certain cancers, especially ovarian cancer, by 37% above the risk of women that had without without endometriosis, right? So now you can look back with retrospective data and you can see, right? But not enough people are looking at this, because if it's not driven by business, let's just be, if it's not driven by the bottom line, the research isn't there.
Yeah. And that's the attention that I'm always 10 steps ahead in how we develop content that now supports something that is a primary source of information, whether that is a well-published journal article, whether that's a white paper, whether that's pieces of content that are so expensive to curate and to build. No one's reading, no one's listening. Well, we have 100,000 plus listeners every month that are coming to us to listen. I want people like you who understand a condition and a disease state to say to these pharmacists who are listening, who are being contacted by patients in a myriad of ways that are experiencing and or have become, victim to a specific disease state or condition, to be able to react to it and be able to take steps to it and really cultivate an environment of full support, starting with the provider. And then, of course, obviously, trickling down the major need is the education of the patient.
Yeah, Todd, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think part of the problem is what's going on with the pharmacy industry right now. Let's set aside the pharmaceutical industry or medical care, because it's a health system, right? We have so many different angles here. But in pharmacy practice, whether it's ambulatory, hospital, clinical, or, people like me that's in the pharmaceutical industry, I'm not counting that right now, or someone in community pharmacy, the job is such that, we've all heard at this point, Pharmageddon and people walking out, and the job is so, dispensing that pharmacists have little time to be the scientists that they are and to keep up with what they need to keep up with. Obviously, for licensure, you're getting your CEs in and you're constantly learning, and there's constant things to do in your state. But for things that don't have a treatment that's pharmacological, it's really the onus of educators like me and you and others that have a little higher look into the research that can bring that type of information out and bridge the gap.
And give a Cliff Notes version of it initially to get some basic knowledge, and then lead people to the pure information where you can really dig in so that you can get the entire referenceable, where the research come from. And you can read into that as nerdy and as granular as you want to get, but at least a preface while you're driving, while you're jogging, while you're, getting your way to work. And you are a pharmacy specialist that focuses on different cancers. You're focused on different, very specific, complex conditions and disease states. And you can be listening and getting a refresher on something quickly. And then it's up to you to go dig into the deeper source information.
Yep. And look at different perspectives, because every conversation like this one, very different perspective. Nobody's really out there talking about the link between the two. I'm doing it because this is my charity and this is what we're standing up for. But it's a conversation that, many years ago, nobody knew about the pink ribbon. Now everybody knows about the pink ribbon. Pink ribbon equals breast cancer equals October. We know that Drive Pink and all this money and billions of dollars is going to go to support breast cancer research. And there are a ton of pharmaceutical companies. And in the first year of our board, we put out 35 grants to help get our own research going for endometrial cancer. And the agenda wasn't there. We were not awarded one grant from Big Pharma. And there are a couple of other charities, but this one, Endometrial Cancer Foundation, is the first. So being a pioneer and creating that conversation isn't easy. So it's where are people getting the rare disease information, right? The difference between the carcinoma and the sarcoma, right, which is the rare disease. Or maybe is a pharmacist thinking about endometriosis, really not even thinking about cancer down the line, that it could be a risk factor. But that's what I'm trying to do, create a conversation that there could be a risk factor. And endometriosis and HRT, right? So these women who were not childbearing anymore, maybe went into early menopause. So what have they done? You know, they're going into I think I went into early menopause in my late 30s. And to know that you're infertile, to know you're not going to have a child, this is painful, this is hard, this is crisis. But on top of that, your doctor wants to just give you an HRT. So you take hormone replacement therapy for a while. And right there on the label, the package insert of the patch, it says risk of endometrial cancer. Right there, it says it. And if you ask any gynecologist, most of them say, well, it's unopposed estrogen. It's like, this is what the guidelines say, right? Think beyond the guidelines, clinicians. Really, I'm really advocating that you can actually think for yourself. And I know the guidelines are put together by the powers that be, or the KOLs. I know that because I ran the ad boards that invited those KOLs, that created the data, that wrote them for them in the pharmaceutical industry, and then had to take my name off because then, you know, in the pharmaceutical industry, you have to be a ghost. And that's why I left the pharmaceutical industry. So, you know, I did that video that I think you saw probably years ago that said, you know, everybody comes to me going, how do I break into the pharmaceutical industry? Right. And then once they've been in for a while, they come back to me and learn about entrepreneurship, and they go, how do I get out of the pharmaceutical industry? So my two most requested.
You just mentioned HRT, hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity in some ways for community pharmacies that have a connection to compounding, non-sterile compounding, sterile compounding, whatever. It's a revenue opportunity to grow a portion of their business that may fall outside of the PBM regulated business. It's very restrictive in comparison to some of the cash-based opportunities. But then they're delivering a service with a lot of white glove service and white glove treatment. And when I use that analogy, I mean really step-by-step treatment, coaching of what you're going through. So what do you think of, I guess they call it BHRT or HRT, in being promoted by some of our community pharmacists who are a little bit more creative and of course a little bit more aggressive, to be talking to women who are like, hey, listen, my sex drive has dropped or something else is happening and I've heard of hormone replacement. Where's the balance between being an advocate for hormone replacement in the right realm, in the right candidate, in the right patient, versus now having it be referenced as a potential cause of endometriosis?
Right. It is known as a cause of endometriosis, and it can cause cancer. So we know that. And so anybody that is dispensing, right, we say first do no harm. And so you have to know that patient's background. You have to let them be a good historian, right? So a very good intake for a patient, working together with the patient's doctor, then that might be okay, right? If that pharmacy is working together and is getting a prescription from a gynecologist that knows that patient, still, I feel that too much is prescribed. I feel like women want it because it's, oh my gosh, my skin's going to be better. My hair is going to be better. It keeps me longer. There is data that shows, you know, and this is why I went on hormone replacement for a while. There is data that shows that it's going to be cardioprotective for me long-term. So it has to be a case-by-case patient, you know, case-by-case by patient, you know what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And once you do that, then you're minimizing risk. If you are doing your due diligence and you feel good and it's a healthcare team approach, then there's nothing wrong in trying. But when just case in point, the use of hormone replacement therapies, if you had endometriosis earlier in life, and I didn't even know this, it could cause it to come back. Even though it's undefined, you have a risk of recurrent endometriosis post-menopause. So it's 100% due to the hormone replacement therapy. So if that menopausal woman starts having pain, pelvic pain is never something that should be going on. Pelvic pain is diagnosed very, very late stage in ovarian cancer, which is why it is a silent killer. And sometimes, the first, you might have no pain whatsoever, and then you might develop a polyp, and that polyp may or may not be cancerous. And if it's just gone too long, there's no pain involved. So, maybe bleeding after menopause or things like that, you have to know the age of your patient, what they're going through, their medical history, and case by case basis, do your due diligence as a clinician, whether an MD or a PharmD, in the patient's best interest long term.
So I'm just imagining things, especially with the rise of digital therapeutics and the ability to measure mass amounts of data. And I think of pharmacogenomics, I think the study of the genome, I think of the reaction, I think of titration, where you're saying, hey, you're on 120 milligrams of XYZ medication. We're going to titrate you down to 30 because we want to get you off of some opioid drug, whatever. But what I'm asking you as a pharmacist is, isn't there an indicator? I don't know if this is a blood test once every other month or quarterly, but isn't there an indicator that I put you on BHRT, hormone replacement, and then I start monitoring if there's any indicators of buildups in your cells of XYZ enzymes that would then flag a red flag for the potential cancer situation that might form? Isn't there like something that can be done as we're monitoring so that we can tightrope the world of HRT?
The best way to monitor is to make sure that a woman goes for her annual checkup, her PAP, make sure that they're checking the lining of her uterus for the increase. I think the number one indicator is a thickening of the uterine lining. And they can do an ablation of that, right? But when they do, of course, some of those cells come out. So then it would be, why is that happening? And maybe we should taper off. So it's recommended by the guidelines that at the natural age of menopause, 51, a woman should go off of HRT. This isn't always the case, and it's still being prescribed. And I know women in their 60s that are still on it, and they're like, but I can't, because then I'll have to go through menopause symptoms and I'll gain weight. And I would just caution that, okay, menopause is a natural condition, just like andropause. We're all going to get a little bit older, and we're trying to tightrope that and say, yes, let's eke it out as long as we can to stay as young as we can. But exercise and eating right and drinking water is really still trumps all of that, right? We don't have to give a drug just because this might be the best thing for us, the way we look or our external condition.
And you're basically, this is the Ozempic and Mounjaro argument. Yeah. It's the same damn thing. It's like
same thing.
Our culture wants to take the quick fix. They want to take a pill, they want to get a shot, and they don't want to do the work. They don't want to make sure that they're eating enough vegetables and grains and fiber and protein. They want a quick fix. Give me that shot, give me that pill, and it's just going to be a magic gun.
Yeah. Well, my tagline from Core Life Group, and something that I created way back in 2004 when I first created my first company, RxER Communications, and that is the right drug to the right patient at the right time. So I'm not anti those medications. I'm not anti the weight loss drugs, and I'm not anti HRT. We have helpful things for people for the right patient. And then after 51, really, we need to say that's not the right patient anymore. And doctors need to stop prescribing that. And pharmacists need to stop compounding for money for that, if that's the situation, because it depends on the state that the person's in and their access to care, if they're rural or if they're going to a major healthcare center, what kind of care they have. Are they going for their mammograms? Are they going for their checkups? And if they're not, if they're getting a prescription from a primary care physician or an internal medicine specialist for either of the things that we're talking about, for weight loss or for hormone replacement, then we have to say that that's wrong. But, everybody wants to trick the system just a little bit and get what they need. But awareness to the public, so public health awareness is really, really critical, that it's okay to say that they're safe when used in the right population by an endocrinologist, right? Like the Ozempic and et cetera. I have no problem with it, with used in the right patients, because if you have insulin resistance, or right, if you have the right categories, if you really fall into, but you can go online right now and not fall into the right BMI and get those medications. So case in point, same exact thing that we're talking about, like you said.
And it's always good to have you here to give us these updates. We are winding down the episode, but I want you to give shout outs to our pharmacist listeners and our technicians and professionals in our listener base, and tell them how to reach you, how to get involved. I know that we're actually resurrecting the Peach Pit Jam, which is going to be really exciting as a podcast that's coming back to Pharmacy Podcast Network. But talk to our listeners of what steps to take next to get involved.
Yeah. So the Endometrial Cancer Foundation is a 501c3 organization. You can go there, donate, learn about a little bit more about what's going on there. My primary website is Arvizu.com. I'm a speaker, an author, an entrepreneur, and a business coach as well, and creator of the Core Life Method, creator of Core Life Coach Institute. So really the other half, like the 90% of my life, is everything on here, and they can get in touch with me. Social media wise, I'm mostly on LinkedIn. That's the professional network, right, that most of us are on. I lost my Instagram. It was hacked last year. So I lost my own name on Instagram, Ann Arvizu. So it's under Dr. Ann Arvizu now. So you can all go try and help me find a little bit more increase in people and social over there. So yeah, just connect with me. I'm easy to connect to.
Very good. Well, we always appreciate your updates. Thank you so much for being on This Week in Pharmacy, and we expect some opportunities to talk with you again. We want to get other pharmacists involved in our conversations, as well as experts in endometriosis. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. That was a wrap for This Week in Pharmacy. If you are in specialty pharmacy and you want to meet up at the ASX Access 2024, please come see us. This will be in Las Vegas, April 28th through May 2nd of 2024. We are super excited to be back at the Assembia event. It's the Super Bowl conference of specialty pharmacy. And with that, I wish you a fabulous week. Pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, everything that you do. We appreciate you. Reach out to Pharmacy Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe on your favorite platform for the podcast content coming in 6 days a week, reaching 30% of our pharmacists nationwide and moving into the global arena of podcasting. And with that, I thank you for everything and excited to continue to grow content for the pharmacy profession. Thank you.